and welcome to Astea Fitness and Intuitive Exercise. My name is Robin Baker. I'm the founder and creator of Astea Fitness and Intuitive Exercise. And today I want to talk about adding exercise back into your life, back into your routine when you are recovering from an eating disorder. And that's really what intuitive exercise is all about. It's learning how to honor your recovery while adding exercise back into your life. And I really wanted to kind of go over some mistakes I made when I was adding exercise back into my life when I was new in recovery. So today we're going to be talking about the 5 mistakes people tend to make when they are adding exercise back into their life when they're in eating disorder recovery. So the first big mistake that I made, and I'm sure many other people in eating disorder recovery have made when they're adding exercise back into their routine, especially if you tended to over-exercise in your eating disorder, was that you decided to go back to the same place or do the same activity that you did before you went into treatment or before you were in recovery. So that's a huge mistake, right? It's like if you decided to go back to the same restaurant that you and your ex-boyfriend or you and your ex-significant other used to go to all the time, and then you haven't been there for a while, and then you have a new relationship and you say, hey, let's go back to that restaurant, and you take them to this old restaurant that you used to go to with your old relationship, and you're like, oh my God, I remember all these things now, all these memories are flooding in, I feel really uncomfortable, this just isn't right, I just feel really gross. It's the same thing. So don't do it to yourself in your eating disorder recovery. Don't do it in your dating life either, but don't do it in your eating disorder recovery as well. Really be aware that even if you're not doing the same activity, but you're in the same vicinity, which is what I did, it can still trigger you. I went back to the gym I used to work out in obsessively, but instead of doing all my other normal crazy stuff that I did before, I decided I would use the pool. However, that still meant I had to walk through the same front doors, I had to walk through the same front desk, I had to pass by the old raunchy scale that was my tormentor, and all of these memories started flooding back in, and all of these feelings started flooding back in, and I had anxiety, and it just was not a good experience. So I highly suggest that you find a different place to start off when you're adding exercise or movement back into your eating disorder recovery. So the flip side to this is if you didn't even exercise at all during your eating disorder, and you're back in your life, you have a team of doctors, or maybe you just have a therapist that you're working with, and they advise to start adding in some joyful movement. But you avoid it at all costs, because that means having your body being seen, having people see you move, what that all entails, and it's just all too much, and you completely avoid it altogether. That's just as harmful because that's old behavior, right? That's not putting yourself out there. That's not moving your body in joy and enjoying how your body moves in the world. That's avoiding all that. So I would say that's just as harmful as if you were going back to the same place that you were obsessively exercising, right? It's just going back to kind of that same familiar place that you were in during your eating disorder, and it just doesn't feel good. So just the same, don't avoid the joyful movement. Go out and do it. Find some place that you feel comfortable. Again, it's going to be a trial and error thing. It's going to be try something, make an observation. That didn't work out. I'm going to try something else. Really, really try to avoid any type of old situations, old behaviors that you did when you were in your eating disorder, irregardless if it was obsessive compulsive exercise or avoiding movement, avoiding your body being seen or moving your body altogether. Either way, avoid those old behaviors. The next mistake that people tend to make when they're adding exercise back into their routine is they go it alone. They don't take someone with them when they start doing some type of joyful movement or exercise program. And I can tell you this makes a huge difference. But you really need to choose wisely. Choose someone that you can trust. Choose someone that mildly understands what you're going through. They don't have to go through an eating disorder, but someone that's supportive and someone that's not going to body shame you or trigger you. And I know that might be a tall order for you, but I can guarantee you can probably find someone that fits somewhat into that box, right? So find someone to go with you to whatever type of movement you're going to do, even if it's just going around the block for a walk. Having someone with you to support you and hold you accountable for this new behavior that you're going to be doing is super, super important. And they can also make sure that they're asking, how are you feeling right now? Do you need anything from me? You can tell them that this is what you need them to ask while you're doing this new behavior. So on to mistake number 3. Number 3 is making some arbitrary schedule of what you're going to be doing, maybe of classes, of different workouts, whatever it is, you're making this schedule and you're sticking to it no matter what. And I can tell you, this is going to kind of make you slip back into kind of that eating disorder mode because there's no wiggle room, right? There's no room for compromise in this schedule. So one of the beautiful things about intuitive exercise is you have full permission to say, I'm not going to move today, I'm not going to exercise today, and that's okay. When you make a schedule and you say, I'm sticking to this, I'm not making any compromises, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks and I'm going to see how I feel, that's when it starts getting down that path of like, all right, a little bit too rigid, there's no room for compromise. And that can tend to be eating disorder thoughts and behaviors. So really making sure that if you do set a schedule, which, we need to do because we are busy people, that you give yourself complete permission to say, I don't feel like doing this today and I'm not going to do it, and that's okay. Number 4 is kind of a biggie, and it requires a lot of preparation. It's being prepared for body comments. Maybe not necessarily even body shaming comments, but comments about your physical body, about the way you look. For some reason, I don't know why, maybe it's just here in California, people feel they have the right to comment on the way your body looks, especially when you're in an exercise environment. So, for example, the gym, right? There's mirrors everywhere. People are generally in there because they're trying to tone, they're trying to sculpt, they're trying to physically alter their body in some way, shape, or form. And people feel like it's free reign to comment on other people, how they look, even when you don't ask them for the comment or for the feedback. So, like I said, I don't know if that's just a California thing. I'm assuming that's kind of everywhere when it's an exercise environment. And it can change from place to place. Maybe you don't experience this so much in a yoga studio, but you experience more in a Pilates studio. Either way, most of the time you're gonna be faced with some type of body comment from somebody. So I would advise you to come up with some good, maybe not zingers, but good responses to give people when they do make comments about your body. For example, there's many times when people will say, to me, and I know I haven't lost weight because I don't feel like I've lost weight and my clothes don't look different on me, but there's many times when people will say, oh my gosh, you look great, have you lost weight? And that's a huge trigger for me because yes, I was anorexic in my life. So someone telling me that is like, oh my God, I hope not. And they look very confused and I'm like, well, I'm not trying to lose weight, so I hope I haven't lost weight. Which is always very difficult for people to kind of wrap their heads around because everyone's always trying to lose weight. So it's very interesting, like I said. So I would advise you to come up with a couple of lines back to the most common things you think you're going to hear from people. Be it, you look amazing, have you lost weight? Or, oh my gosh, how did you get your body? Or just all these kind of messy comments that we tend to hear people say in exercise environments. And last but not least, the final mistake that I made and that I'm sure many other people have made when they've added exercise back into their eating disorder recovery routine is that they weren't prepared for triggers. They didn't have any other coping skills in place or, prepared to do if something happened to trigger them when they were adding the exercise back in. And I can guarantee you that if you dealt with some type of compulsive exercise component in your eating disorder, you will be triggered when you start adding exercise back into the mix. Because unfortunately, in our culture, exercise is so tied to weight loss and physical manipulation of the body that it's almost like you can't separate the two. You cannot say, oh, I'm just exercising for fun. I'm exercising for the pure joy of it. People tend to look at you sideways when you tell that to them. So be prepared to be triggered and have a set of coping skills put in place. Know that if you're going to be triggered when you go to a certain class, or you've been triggered there before, but you still want to go because you really enjoy this class, you go, and at the end of it, you get to talk to somebody afterwards and talk through what just happened. So setting that up before you even get to the class and knowing that this person is going to be able to answer your call is huge. That's a biggie. Or there might be other coping skills you put into place. Maybe you go home and you color for a little bit to dampen your anxiety. Maybe you take a bath. Maybe you lay down and you just close your eyes and listen to music for 30 minutes. Put these things in place before you even get triggered. Have a list of go-to things that you can do to help you cope when you get triggered, when you're adding exercise back into your routine. So I realized I did not record an outro for that video blog, and here I am trying to edit it on my Saturday night, and I don't have anything to finish the video with. So here it is. Thanks for watching, and I want to hear from you. What are the things that you've run up against if you've tried to add exercise back into your routine after you're in recovery from an eating disorder? I listed 5, but I'm sure there's plenty more. So if you have something that is challenging you right now that you're struggling with adding exercise back into your routine, I'd love to hear about it and I'd love to help you with it. So please comment below and I would love to hear feedback. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, guys, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.